Welcome back to the Cat's Tale. This time we're going to look at the importance of prioritizing characters. To put it simply, some characters in a deck are much more important to keep alive than others at different points in the game. Being able to recognize this will allow you to focus your own damage on your opponent's key characters while keeping your own key characters safe. So, what factors decide which characters you need to prioritize eliminating? It can be pretty complicated to figure out, but here are 5 tips on what to look out for. For some decks, in particular many combo decks, it can be pretty simple. There will be one character whom the deck is built around who deals the majority of the damage in the deck. Cyno and Itto are examples of characters who are frequently used in this role, often coupled with defensive characters who are much less powerful on their own. A second thing to look out for is equipment cards. If your opponent uses elemental dice to equip an artifact or a weapon card to a character, then that character will become stronger and gain more value every turn they can make use of that equipment. But if this character is eliminated before they can get value from the weapon or artifact, then the card and dice used will effectively be wasted, giving you the advantage. Another really important factor to look for is the energy stored on characters. As discussed back in video 6, bursts are very strong skills, balanced by requiring energy on your characters. If a player loses a character with several energy before they can burst, that's a huge disadvantage. Next, pay attention to the elements of the different characters. If opponent has 2 pyro characters and 1 electro character, and all your characters have pyro aura applied, then the electro character is likely to be the priority character, because without that character, they can't trigger reactions. Finally, especially in the late game, characters with fast skills should be prioritized over characters with slow skills. Imagine it's the final move of the game, and your opponent's character is alive on 3 health. In this position, would you rather have Collet or Fischl left as your active character? You'd obviously want Collet, since her skill immediately deals 3 damage, whereas Fischl's skill only deals 1 damage immediately and needs 2 whole turns to provide 3 damage, which will just be too slow. So in general, characters with faster skills should be prioritized in the late game. Once you've identified the key characters on both sides, what are you meant to do with this knowledge? Firstly, you want to try to save your big damage for your opponent's key character if possible, and avoid wasting damage on unimportant characters. Essentially, the only reason you have to kill characters in this game is to prevent your opponent from using that character's skills. They can't use those skills if that character's dead. If your opponent didn't want to use those skills anyway, it's probably not worth eliminating them. In fact, it can be actively harmful, as it allows your opponent to switch to a more important character for free, uses up your dice, and enables your opponent's I haven't lost yet cards. Consider instead using a lower damage skill, or just swapping characters instead, and saving your dice and bursts for a better target. Similarly, you want to avoid your own key characters dying to your opponent's damage. Try to save defensive food to protect this character instead of just using it whenever, and consider swapping to a less important character to tank damage when your opponent is less likely to use a high damage skill or burst. Let's see if we can apply these rules to figure out who the priority characters are in this situation. In fact, I'll give you a moment to figure it out. Okay, so the obvious one on opponent's side is Itto. Full energy, burst ready to go, weapon equipped, 3 superlative super strength stacks ready. The skills on the other characters only create summons that can't stack and deal 1 damage at a time. So they're almost useless here, except for tanking damage. All we really need to do to win is take down Itto. What about on our side? The game is almost over, so we just want the fastest sources of immediate damage available, which in this case means Raiden's burst and Nahida's burst. And Raiden is the most important because she can trigger a reaction on Itto for extra damage. Having figured that out, let's jump into this game here and see how we can play this out. So let's look at this situation, at how we might need to prioritize our characters and our opponent's characters. Now, our opponent's playing a double Hydro Itto deck, so they've been stalling this whole game, building up dice, building up energy on Itto, equipping him with this weapon, getting these superlative super strength stacks, in order that they can, in one turn, use this burst and deal a large amount of damage to my characters, probably killing at least a couple of them if opponent has the right cards in his hand. And I have to be aware of this and think, what can I do to set up to win this game? I'm probably only going to be able to take one more skill or burst this turn, and maybe at the start of the next turn I'll also have just one or two more chances as well. But what can I do to, avoid losing the game? Well, I want to take the most impactful actions that I can take. Now in this case, Nahida's burst could do 5 damage, but it won't even cause any reactions against the Dendro Aura here. Jiangling can't use her burst. I do have a burst on Raging Shogun. To use it I would have to use a lot of cards from my hand. But there's no point losing the game with all these cards still in your hand. Itto is his key character. If Itto can be killed, then what would my opponent have left? They will have 1 damage skill on Mona, 1 damage normal attack on Mona, 1 damage normal attack on Kokomi, a little bit of healing that takes several turns to work. A team of Mona Kokomi can't cause any reactions and really is a terrible, terrible team in the late game. So all that matters is dealing the damage to Itto here. So what can I do to do the most damage to Itto and give you the best chance to win? Well, I'm going to spend a toss up hoping to get some Electro Dice. Or let's see how lucky I get. I'm going to get 1 on me. Right. 1 more Electro Die. Okay, that's fine. That's a good outcome. Quickly switch. Switch without paying the cost to Raiden Shogun. Fodder 2 cards. So the cards I've used. Keep the essential cards that could help my character survive that might be important on the last 2 turns. And use this burst. It would be great if I could kill Itto here, but I can't. But I am able to take him down to 2 health remaining. Then all I can do is sit back and watch, see how much damage your opponent can do to my team. It's unlikely, very unlikely that he can kill all my characters, but I'm entirely expecting 2 of them to die. And the Gambler's Art Earrings is the first piece of the puzzle.
Detached from them.
Opponent has cost reduction on his normal attack. And Legend of Vanessa to give him more dice, and the fixing he needs to get 2 Geo dice out of that, allowing him to do 2 more normal attacks.
Coming through.
Next turn he can still get a lot of value out of Itto if Itto survives. Opponent takes a long time to think about how he swaps here, and this is a sensible swap given this 2 damage could kill either Itto or Kokomi. As it is, after my summons go off, opponent will have 2 characters left on 1 health. But critically, I've killed the character, the Itto, who was the real scary one I needed to worry about. And in this situation, Nahida versus 2, even without this Lotus Flower Crisp, imagine we have no cards in our hand, my Nahida can kill his team in 2 turns, and his team, especially since I'm going first, can do only the same, 1 damage per normal attack. Even this 2 health Nahida here can't be killed in 1 turn by his team. Now, I have the extra security in case of perhaps the food that gives a normal attack plus 1 damage of having the Lotus Flower Crisp I saved. And leaving the burst available and the dice I need for it to guarantee the win here.
Sharing my knowledge. New strategy needed.
Okay, so we have here a great example of where prioritizing defending a specific character can be very important. So we have a slightly scary position here against the most obvious threat being our opponent's Oceaniad with burst available, which in this situation is set to deal 6 hydro damage, which they can use on their next turn. In our situation, we have Zhangli on 6 health and Raiden on 3 health. And we have 3 realistic options here. We can swap to Raiden, we could attempt to use a defensive food on Zhangling, or we could just normal attack on Zhangling. And the answer comes down to what we're happy with happening, whether we're happy losing our Zhangling, whether we're happy losing Raiden Shogun. Now, in this situation, Zhangling doesn't actually have a lot of value. He's already used her burst, we have 2 Pyronado charges available, we have a Grober here, and it's very unlikely that we'll need another summon of that before the game ends. And therefore, Zhangling doesn't really bring anything unique to the table. On the other hand, Raiden's burst is very powerful in this situation. Since we have several pyro applications, the electro application is almost a guaranteed reaction, and it's just a huge burst of upfront damage, which at this late stage in the game is important. You don't want something that takes several turns to get value when you're on the last turn. So in this situation, Raiden is by far a more important character than Zhangling, and if you do swap to Raiden, and Raiden gets burst, yes, it is overkill from the opponent, but there is 0 chance you win after that. Zhangling just cannot do this damage herself, especially with the Lucky Dog Circlet, allowing the Oceaniad to heal every turn. So if you swap to Raiden here, you guaranteed lose, and you can't even save her with a food. Saving Zhangling isn't really useful either, because actually if Zhangling dies, we can get value out if I haven't got lost yet, and immediately get a kill on the Oceaniad, and then be in a strong position from there. In fact, you can figure it out. We have deterministic lethal, we have a win if opponent was to do that and have no other relevant cards. So in this situation, the best option is simply to attack on Zhangling. If opponent does kill Zhangling, then we can use our offensive cards on Raiden and actually have the win, very likely, from that position. So doing this, opponent has the option to kill our Zhangling, but they decide not to take it because it would actually not be valuable for them here. They instead choose to tank damage on their hyperstasis, which is sensible since this is their most important character, since it's wearing the silver circlet. So I will just continue with the same logic. We can secure a kill on the first part of the hyperstasis here, although it will revive on 1. We have a few ways to maybe deal that small amount of damage already in sight. Now opponent does have 2 relevant cards here, an Abyssal Summons and a Send-Off, which will save their hyperstasis from dying to Grober. So on our turn here, we've got a few interesting options, and this Hilito Shooter is important since it actually would secure the damage needed to kill our Zhangling. This is where our card advantage comes in, as well as our dice advantage. We have a few options. We could use the Lotus Script as necessary, but actually, calculating the breakpoint, 2 + 1 + 1 and 2 reactions is 6. We have the option for the Sweep Madame instead, which allows us then to use our burst, which will give us important value in the long run and an extra chance to kill their Oceaniad, potentially with Raiden's burst next turn. So we go, carrying the breakpoint, keeping Zhangling on live on 1, a really essential setup against the single target high damage burst here. So Oceaniad's abilities tend to be quite slow, which means actually, if we were to swap to Raiden here with the Lotus Crisp, opponent wouldn't even have a reasonable counterplay. Or a similar play on our side. But in this situation, opponent feels forced to go for it, kill our Zhangling, which enables our, that we've been setting up for these turns, with I haven't lost yet, into a burst for overkill damage. We didn't even need the Pyronado. We could have killed him through a Lotus Flower Crisp at the end there even. Let's have a look at this situation, keeping in mind what we know about prioritizing characters. So in this situation, the obvious play would be to potentially use our skill on Nahida, which will get a nice efficient kill against his Bennett, trigger a Pyro Elemental reaction to give us the Burning Field, and also spread some more Seeds of Scanta among all of his characters. Now, the danger of this play is that our most important character in this deck, and especially in this situation, is Nahida. And if we kill his Bennett here, and he gets to swap straight to his Electro Hypostasis, then opponent's going to be able to use this very powerful Rock Paper Scissors combo move, and since opponent has Bennett Burst active along with the equipment card, this will give all of these instances of damage plus 2 damage for 4 plus 4 plus 5 damage, so giving him an easy kill on Nahida here, even if I use the Lotus Flower Crisp, assuming he has a Pyro Resonance in hand, which he, since he hasn't played one yet, is very likely to. So in conclusion, if we use our skill on Nahida, and our Nahida is going to die to his cube, and he's going to be able to keep doing lots of damage with the other instance of this skill to whatever character I end up swapping to, and I'm unlikely to be able to actually counter that effectively. We don't really have the ability, just with Jiangling and Raiden Shogun, to put up much of a fight against the team here, especially with their Bennett Burst active with our key character down. So we can't let Nahida die, and the other reason Nahida is such an important character in this matchup is Nahida's really good at killing the Electro Cube. So given that it revives on 1 health, the Seed of Scanta is often critical or a very efficient way to kill off the Electro Cube after it comes back with the extra 1 piercing damage without having to waste another attack on it. So in essence, we can't use our Nahida skill here, or our Nahida would die and then we will lose the game. But it's still not bad to develop another Groba, use Jiangling's skill, since we don't have a Groba active at the moment, and actually against opponent's most threatening character, their most important character, their only Electro character, the Electro Hypostasis, the break paints on this end up being really awkward, 4 plus 4 plus 5 when I have the Lotus Flower Crisp in hand. The opponent's going to opt just to use a normal Bennett, and we'll see how the game ends up playing out from this point. The opponent still has the Bennett Burst with the talent card at the start of his turn 2, which is very strong. But now we can actually swap to our Nahida and start getting value out of her at a situation where she's not vulnerable to dying, since the opponent has no dice left.
Make yourselves at home.
Nice clean kill on that burst. And then using our I haven't lost yet to make sure our Lieben goes off, and our Raiden Shogun, which isn't going to be vulnerable to opponent's Pyro Resonance, since there's no element on her currently. Charged up on energy for the next round. And it's still going to be a close game, especially with the opponent able to use Bennett Burst again here, and actually get some good value out of it.
I'm going in.
And actually we have an interesting situation again here. If we use the burst on Raiden, again, opponent's important character, now he's used the Bennett Burst. Don't care too much about these, especially given our characters both have Pyro Element on them currently. By far the strongest thing they can do would be to use Electro Hypostasis, and specifically to use the Elemental skill here. And assuming the opponent has I haven't lost yet, which the way we played last turn prevented them from being able to use that effectively, killing their character after they'd finished their actions. They're very likely to have that, be able to go up to 5 dice if I kill the Bennett here, and then deal a vast amount of damage to my characters with the elemental reactions
I've been waiting for you for ages.
using this skill. So instead, I'm going to think, if I swap to Nahida now, opponent's not going to be able to use a Pyro Resonance as well as this skill unless they've got something crazy in hand. So Nahida's safe here, and again, this is going to be my important character for actually threatening to kill his Pyro Cube. Even if I get overloaded off, I now have my complete dice advantage. I can use my burst against his essential character here now, and then execute the plan I mentioned earlier, using Nahida's E-costs, 3-cost skill to actually kill the electric cube efficiently with the Seed of Skandha. And again, so who's my important character here now? Oh, it's going to be the character without the element on her, the character with 2 energy to spare. It's going to be Nahida. So I played in a way that now lets me swap back to Raiden Shogun end of turn, saving my most important character, hopefully for the last bit of damage. It's still a close game because the opponent still has the insane Bennett Burst with the insane talent card available, and the turn priority here. So let's see what they can do with the Lotus Flower Crisp as well. Just a bit of planning of our turn here. Our non-attack on Raiden isn't going to be good enough to win, so we're going to have to bank on surviving till end of turn.
Detached from the...
Then has the Gamblers for 2 extra dice, but they still need 1 extra source of dice here. For our last burst there, we'll get the job done. There we go. And just before the game ends, the opponent does have those 2 key cards. That's making sure we kept our Nahida alive to the end allowed us to get there.
Could it break?